Arguably the most famous and most popular, Resident Evil 4 was initially released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2005 and then later on released on the PlayStation 2. This is the version that I had growing up. I was about 12 when this game came out, and for me, this was the first game in the Resident Evil series that I finished all the way through, and it holds a very special place in my heart, not just for Resident Evil, but for video games as a whole. So just in time for the new remake coming out later this year, let's go ahead and take a look and see if Resident Evil 4 is still all that it cracks up to be.
Resident Evil 4.
When looking at the Resident Evil franchise at the turn of the century, the series was in an interesting spot. Its prominence in the gaming space continued with some entries on the Nintendo GameCube, which Capcom was pushing more games for. Series creator Shinji Mikami came back as director for Resident Evil 4, and its development went through multiple builds that were eventually scrapped. Most famously was the initial build of the game, which had the team go to Europe to get pictures of various architecture for inspiration for their texture design. As it progressed, the game's tone and focus on a cool main character with special powers strayed too far from the series' survival horror roots, that Mikami convinced Hideki Kamiya, intended Resident Evil 4 director and director of Resident Evil 2, to take his team and make a new game separate from the Resident Evil brand. That build would end up to be the first Devil May Cry, another successful Capcom series. Following a few other builds that were scrapped, Mikami decided to take over directorial duties for the highly anticipated follow-up. He made a new story that was unique and not focused on Umbrella, and instead put the series in a new era with zombies technically not being in the game, as the game's enemies, referred to as the Los Ganados, are infected with a strong hive mind-like parasite. It even removed the classic fixed camera angles and tried a brand new dynamic camera system. It was a bold statement, and even some within the development team questioned some of the changes. In an interview with Game Informer magazine, Shinji Mikami further explains that after playing Resident Evil 0, he felt that the series was becoming more of the same, and needed something big to change to get the series back to its best-selling status as it once was. During this time, the remake of Resident Evil 1, which is excellent by the way, and Resident Evil 0 on the GameCube weren't garnering as many sales as other contemporary Capcom series were at the time on the PlayStation 2. One could argue that the exclusivity of these titles was definitely hurting the sales of the series, but at this point, Capcom and Nintendo had entered an agreement to have Resident Evil 4 be an exclusive for the GameCube, and Shinji Mikami was dedicated to bring something new and fresh for the series to make it scary again. When Resident Evil 4 was released in 2005, gamers were excited to see the next chapter for Resident Evil. And just a quick note, I'm playing the PC version on Steam here. Resident Evil 4 opens with Leon Kennedy, protagonist from Resident Evil 2, giving us a summary of the events at Raccoon City, and briefly discusses the downfall of Umbrella and where he stands now. He has been tasked with locating the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, who has been kidnapped and sighted in a village in Europe. Following the destruction of Raccoon City, Leon has become sort of a secret agent working directly for the office of the president. It's cool to see this implied growth with Leon since we last saw him in Resident Evil 2. He's kept busy, and his appearance and demeanor has matured. He's still the same snarky self, and it's a good fit to follow him in this game. And this is where you get to see what may seem obvious now, but this behind-the-shoulder camera system and control scheme was revolutionary at the time. You still just use the left stick to move, but it honestly feels much more fluid than the standard tank controls of the series past. Of course, minor adjustments like quick turn, inventory-free reload, and interactable terrain add on to the fluidity. Your weapons have a laser sight automatically that is a great way to help you aim without having a huge reticule blocking your view or getting in the way. The laser is a godsend when aiming, and Leon aims realistically where he can sway and makes further away targets believably easier to hit. It's hard to overstate how well this works and how much influence this game has had on other games like Dead Space, even in the survival horror space, or even just third-person shooters in general, like the Gears of War series, Uncharted, The Last of Us, and many more. Resident Evil 4 widely helped influence them all. What also sets Resident Evil 4 apart from its predecessors is its pacing and structure. The game is set up in chapters. Some smaller differences are the lack of ink ribbons, so you can save more freely, and are even given opportunities to save at the end of each chapter. This puts less strain on the player and allows them to tackle chapters or sections at their own pace. Resident Evil 4 is based around 3 distinct sections, and exploring each one is unique and equally rewarding in its subtle progression and constant way of adapting and introducing new mechanics to the player. The first section of the game is based on the village where Ashley was reported to be sighted. It serves as a great introduction to the hostile nature of the Ganados, and while letting the player get adjusted to the movement and combat in the game. The intro of this game is very famous, as you enter the village square and just have to survive. You are introduced to a lot of the core mechanics of the game in such an early segment that shows the player the tone and speed at which the game operates. It also gives you a lot of time to get used to how moving and shooting feels in this kind of confined space. There's your standard enemies, some that lunge at you, some can use tools, and some can even throw weapons at you. Combat options are expanded too, like shooting legs to make enemies trip and fall. You can shoot the weapons out of enemies' hands, or even shoot the projectiles coming towards you. Going into some houses shows you that you can barricade doors and windows by pushing furniture. The Ganados can use ladders to reach upper stories too. You can jump out of windows or hop ledges for more options of movement and escape routes. It's a great part to let you explore and get a feel of the game. And just when you're about out of ammo, at your wit's end, the church bell rings.
Oh, la campana.
Es hora de rezar. Tenemos que irnos.
Lord Sattler.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Bingo? Yeah, that's the other part about Resident Evil 4. It's that this game is a comedy masterpiece. Much like other Resident Evil games, there's a lot of really cheesy dialogue and situations that are just so funny to me, even within their original context. Leon is constantly sassing everyone he talks to, and it's just such a great time. It wouldn't be a Resident Evil game without some sort of cheese or just really funny situations happening to the player character. A great early example of this is sometimes villagers will try to crush you with these giant boulders, and you have to do quick time events to get past them, like a lot of button mashing. There's a good handful of QTEs in this game, and yeah, it's definitely a 2005 game, so it makes sense, I guess. Also early on, there's a dog in a bear trap, and you gotta save it. Don't forget that. Your first objective in the village here is to find any leads to where Ashley Graham might be. Sometimes your radio buddy, Hunnigan, will check in to give you guidance on your current situation and mark details on your map. The map is pretty diverse and shows you your objective pretty much at all times. And speaking of the map, there's no sort of minimap or indicators on the main gameplay screen, and that just adds to the horror aspect of this game. The sound design is absolutely fantastic. When you approach a new area, you can hear enemies in the distance yell for others when you get spotted. Tense music will swell up when you are in danger and will fade when the danger is over, for now. At times, Resident Evil 4 can seem like a pretty action-focused game, and there are definitely times where it is. But it's the balance, in the tense moments when it's not, that guides and makes it such a memorable time. As you further progress, Leon will soon meet a strange ally and be introduced to the Big Cheese.
Little rough, don't you think? You're not like them?
No. You?
Okay, I have only one very important question. You got a smoke?
Got gum.
Perfect. The big cheese.
What?
As you pass out, a scene shows a scary figure injecting you with something. Leon wakes up and sees that he's captured with the man he just met, Luis Serra. They talk about what is going on, and wait a minute. They took Leon's jacket. Who stole Leon's jacket? It turns out that Luis used to be a cop in Madrid and mentions overhearing some villagers talk about Ashley being taken to the church. After a hilariously close encounter, you break free and Luis vanishes. At this point, you are greeted by quite possibly the coolest character in the entire series, the Merchant.
Got something that might interest you. Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger.
Throughout the game, you can interact with the Merchant to buy new weapons and items, sell treasures that you find, and purchase upgrades for your weapons. Resident Evil 4 uses a grid-based inventory system that is honestly one of the most satisfying inventory systems I've ever seen in video games. It's so much fun playing Tetris in your inventory as you organize everything for quick access later. It's just so satisfying, and a huge step up from the previous entries when you only had like 7 different inventory spots. Like when you go fishing and you catch the big black bass, and you have to make careful choices on if you need to leave behind your grenades to fit this fish in your briefcase. Oh, there we go, it fits. Oftentimes you will find treasures, usually hidden like gemstones and jewelry, that can be combined with each other to make even more valuable items to sell. All over this game too are barrels and crates that you can use your knife or weapons to open to find hidden goodies like herbs and ammos and Some merchant zones later on also have a shooting gallery. These are awesome as a good way to practice aiming, take a break from the tense action, and you also get little action figures as a reward, as well as being rewarded in-game currency, so it's totally worth the pit stop. After another encounter with the Big Cheese, he talks about you having the same blood as him, and you go into his bathroom and see that he has a urinal and toilet paper, but there's no toilet. What the As you make it to the church, you find it locked, and you have to get a key near the giant lake. Once you get there, that's when you fight the game's first boss, the giant fish. Also, don't shoot the lake beforehand, that'll just get you an instant death, and honestly, it's kind of funny. Thankfully, this boss fight is based on water, so you're in a boat, and you have these infinite harpoons that you use to defeat the fish. But be careful, because he can knock you out, and then you have to button mash, literally like your life depends on it to get back on the boat, and it sucks. He's honestly probably just mad I took his little buddy earlier. With the fish defeated, you find the church key, and you can go back to the church, but not long after being ambushed by a mini-boss, El Gigante. This massive brute will crush buildings around you and take a lot of bullets before its back parasite is exposed, its weakness. When you're in your darkest hour, a friend will emerge. It's the dog! That's right, the one that you saved comes back to help save you. In this fight, he will jump down and distract El Gigante so you can get in more damage. It's a bit of an annoying fight, honestly, but one that is quickly dealt with thanks to the help from your new best friend, the dog. Back at the church, once you get inside, you finally get to meet Ashley Graham.
Ashley!
Don't come!
Hey! Take it easy.
No! Get away!
Calm down. Everything's going to be just fine. My name's Leon. I'm under the President's order to rescue you.
What? My father?
That's right. And I have to get you out of here. Now come with me.
So once you meet Ashley, she becomes a part of your party, and playing with Ashley opens up a whole new section of the game, which I guess we're just gonna call the escort mission. The way she works is that you have a command button that you can tell her to wait in place or to follow you. In some areas, you'll find dumpsters that you can leave her in while you clear an area. Sometimes she's needed for puzzles, and you'll have to make sure you don't get separated by helping her climb down ladders or slopes, all while trying to be a good gentleman. The beauty of having Ashley is how her body language helps convey information to the player as well as adding a bit of personality. She cowers behind you as you aim at enemies. She'll look fearfully behind if you are being pursued. She will even point out traps that you can use against your enemies, and even does a nice little celebration when you defeat enemies, and that's real cute. Ashley also adds another level of difficulty in that if her health falls below 0 or she gets carried away while you're distracted, it's an instant game over. She's also voiced by Sandy from SpongeBob, so good luck on hearing that one.
Take that, you sorry old clam! Y'all need to learn some manners.
Ashley, in this regard, is adding another level of that suspense because not only are you watching out for yourself, but now you have someone else you have to protect and take care of who can't fight back. So it adds another deep level of urgency, but also tension. I think it does it so well in this game.
Probably one of the more infamous things about Resident Evil 4 is the escort mission aspect with Ashley Graham, the president's daughter. And when you talk to a lot of people who've played this game, a lot of people like to quote that Ashley is annoying, or gets in the way, or is always getting captured, and that kind of is adding on to a negative experience with remembering Resident Evil 4. Now, the thing about Ashley in this game is that you only really have her for like 30% of the game. Like, yes, she is there and she adds that level of complexity, but there is a lot of story beats where she gets captured again and you have to go rescue her again. So it really isn't as bad as people remember. I think people just often like to quote Ashley as kind of the representative of the escort missions in video games, kind of as an early example. And I think that's kind of not really giving it enough credit because it works really well in this game, especially compared to other escort mission games and other video games later on.
Strangely, right after you meet Ashley, you also get to meet the main antagonist of the game, Lord Sadler. Wait, what's going on with that chandelier? He reveals that both you and Ashley are infected with Las Plagas, and that it's only a matter of time before you are fully under his control. He leads a religious cult that has slowly been spreading their influence, and their goal is to gain influence of the United States? ? They just really hate America, I guess. You're able to escape with Ashley, and you have to make it to the rendezvous point for your extraction. At this point, you get to revisit the village square again, but this time it's at night and it's raining. It's a familiar area, we've been to it twice now so far, and now you can hardly see. There's enemies lurking about, it's raining, and you have to worry about Ashley's safety too. It's a lot to process, and it helps push this game's aspects of survival horror even more. This is a very scary section, and it also gives the player the opportunity to see what it looks like if Ashley gets taken, in a more safe environment, kind of testing the waters in a way for the player. Shortly after, too, you get to meet up with Luis again, and it's, something.
Small world, eh? Well, I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics, too.
How rude! And I don't believe there's any relevance with my figure and my standing. Who are you?
Oh, excuse me, your highness.
A horde of Ganados surround the cabin you're in, and it's time to barricade and survive as long as you can, just like you learned in the village square prior. This game takes so many elements of introducing you smaller examples that you're going to be using later on in actual difficult situations. This part is intense. There's multiple windows and the upstairs to worry about. I found the best solution was to block off 2 of the windows downstairs, and then constantly just clear out 1 window and hope that Luis can take care of the rest as best as he can. Ganados at this point too can lose their head and have a Plagas whip around like blades, and these are the worst because if they get you, they can get you to critical health really quickly. Headshots definitely matter in this game, and in some cases, headshots matter twice for the same enemy. After you finish, Luis leaves because he forgot something, and then you're back alone again with Ashley. Towards the end of the village section here, you get to a big shed, and it's finally time to fight the Big Cheese as a proper boss fight. He turns into this, like, weird centipede guy, and he's kind of scary, but honestly, his fight isn't too bad. At this point, you and Ashley are being chased by a ton of Ganados that you seek refuge in the giant castle up ahead, closing the first section of the game. And at this point, we're not even halfway through. The castle is one of the longest, but also one of the coolest, while also being one of the more frustrating parts of Resident Evil 4. It's a lot to process. At the castle gates, the merchant is there, and he offers a set of weapon upgrades. Now's a good time to kind of go over all the weapons. Your starting pistol is honestly really good, and every time I play, I always keep it and level it up for the entire playthrough. There are other pistols you can get with unique attributes, but usually by the time they become available, I feel like it's not really worth it to switch over due to the cost. The shotgun also gets a few other options. You can get the riot gun, which has much better range and has a knack for blasting heads off way easier. But you could also get the striker, which has hipfire, so it's less accurate, but a large magazine and rapid shots can really help in a pinch with crowd control. The rifle gets an upgrade called the semi-auto rifle, which, as the name implies, is semi-automatic, and literally this is necessary for later parts of the game, and you'll see why later. Wrapping up the weapons that I personally use, I always buy the TMP. It's a great weapon for crowd control with good accuracy, and it has a large ammo capacity as well. There's also a set of magnums in the game, but usually I wait to buy the Killer 7 magnum towards the second half of the game here, because that one is just the most powerful one, and usually I don't really need the magnum early on. You can also buy the mine thrower, and honestly, I've never used this thing before. There are some spots where it's useful, I just don't really bother. You can essentially shoot a mine that will be activated when someone walks over it, so it's more so for ambush, but whatever. There's also a group of different grenades you can use, like frag grenades, incendiary grenades, and flash grenades, all kind of doing what their names implied, so they can also be helpful in certain situations too. And most importantly, something you start out the game with is the knife. And the knife is so good in this game. It's so easy to knock enemies down and save ammo by just knifing them to death. I've never knifed so much in a Resident Evil game as I have knifed in Resident Evil 4. And of course, the healing items. The herbs are back. And they're pretty simple in this one too. Green herbs will heal you, a green combined with a red will heal you completely, and mixing a green herb with a yellow herb will heal you and increase your maximum health. For Leon or for Ashley, so choose wisely.
In Resident Evil 4, they make the herbs when you mix them into little tubes, so now it's really easy. It's for consumption. Ugh. Still good.
Back to the castle, it feels reminiscent of the mansion or other big labyrinth structures in games of series past. There's a lot of rooms with unique puzzles and enemies here, nothing that requires any sort of huge backtracking, but still kind of some little elements sprinkled here and there. The castle is in full control of followers of a religion called the Los Illuminados.
Los Illuminados.
Los Illuminados. That's a mouthful.
The Los Illuminados, who here are under the control of Ramon Salazar, a man of 20 years old. But obviously now he's been under control of Sadler and the Las Plagas.
I have been honored with the prodigious power from the great Lord Sadler. I've been expecting you, my brethren.
No thanks, bro.
The cultists are truly terrifying, completely different from the villagers we've seen so far. The empty halls are unsettling, as you hear the droning muttering of the cultists behind every corner, further cementing the feeling of you being watched and hunted. A new enemy type is introduced too, these big armored guys with huge claws called Garradors. They hate noise, you have to shoot these little bells for them to go bonkers on so you can hit the weak spot on their back. These guys honestly suck and I hate them. A chance meeting with Luis confirms that Leon and Ashley are indeed infected with the Las Plagas, but Luis seems to know what is happening and how to stop it. Throughout the game, you end up finding research notes from him that reveal that he was a researcher on the Las Plagas for Sadler before turning against him. Over time, Leon and Ashley will either cough up blood or start having feelings of fatigue as the Las Plagas starts slowly controlling the insides of their bodies, and it's gross. It's a parasite. It's gross. You also catch wind that there is someone else in the background playing a hand here, pulling some strings, as it were. But who is it? Maybe we'll find out soon. Progressing through the castle with Ashley, for the most part, is fine. There's some simple rooms where you have to worry about enemies that have shields or enemies with crossbows, but then you get to the room. If you've played Resident Evil 4, you know the room I'm talking about. This is the room that shapes gamers. It's the Water Hall. The Water Hall is arguably the worst room in the entire game. The Water Hall is a two-stage process. First, you are immediately greeted by multiple Los Illuminados, and a section where you have to summon a crank to let you access the second part of the Water Hall. This first section is brutal. There are those aforementioned shield enemies that stop a lot of your bullets, enemies with maces that have wide hitboxes, and crossbow enemies shooting you from afar. It's the first room, in my experience, where enemies can come at you from all angles, and with no space to put Ashley. You and her are in big trouble. After successfully cranking the crank, the second part of the room opens up, and you have to boost Ashley to a top section with 2 more cranks for her to raise a bridge across the water to escape. Here you have to juggle protecting Ashley, mostly with the rifle because of the range, while also being bombarded yourself with enemies on your level. It's a multitasking nightmare and the most mentally intensive part of this game. When people say they hate Ashley, you know things went south for them in the water hall. Thankfully, right after, Ashley gets trapped and you have to go find a way to rescue her. Here we get a nice break for you to be alone and... Wait. Oh god, no. Is that... It's one of the worst rooms in the game. It's the hedge maze. We just got past hell itself, just to be put back into the fray. The hedge maze is a garden area where you have to find 2 crests that you put into a door to open the path forward. The hedge maze is dark, it's silent, it's claustrophobic, and the worst part, it's full of infected dogs. Yet again, Resident Evil 4 perfectly brings in that balance between the action-packed anxiety we just faced with the water hall, back to true horror of the isolation and fear in the hedge maze. Constantly you're hearing the running and growls of dogs from all angles. Because of the tightness of the maze, it makes it so hard to anticipate where they're coming from. This maze, for me personally, is the scariest part of the entire game. And it's also like the only part in the game that dogs are in, and I already really don't like angry dogs in games. They're already scary as it is, and ugh. After surviving the maze, you get to meet a familiar face. Ada Wong. She's the one that's been interfering and trying to get a sample of the Lost Plagueis, as it turns out. And also, she's been working with Wesker. She leaves for now, and you get a good chance to loot the castle for some items and upgrades, and It's also important to note that soon you'll come to a room that has an RPG in it. Usually RPGs are a one-use item you can buy from the merchant for like 30,000 pesos or whatever, but this one's just free. It's free real estate. Remember this because we will be using this later. As Leon continues to search for a way to get Ashley, we are greeted again by Luis.
I got it.
And, yeah. With Luis's death, he gives you some pills that will help kind of slow the transformation of the Plagas taking over you. But the sample that he has is taken by Lord Sadler. As you free Ashley from her restraints, you get to play as her for a little bit as she finds a way back to Leon. This section is kind of short, but it is reminiscent of like playing as Sherry in Resident Evil 2. Ashley can't attack, but she can kind of crawl under tables, hide from enemies, sometimes pick up these giant burning candles and set them on fire, you know, usual stuff. And there's a couple puzzles to solve in here too. Ashley, crank that soldier boy. After dodging some traps, soon Ashley gets back to Leon and you both move on. Until Ashley is taken yet again, but this time by some insect Plagas monsters. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Ashley's with you for like 30% of this game, and she's not that bad, y'all. Yet again, you are tasked with finding Ashley as she has been captured and brought to a different part of the castle again. And as you progress, you reach, oh no, the twin Garrador room. Okay, this one's not as bad, but this room does suck. As a kid, I would use that aforementioned rocket launcher from earlier to just speed through this because I don't have the time for this garbage. But I'm an adult now, I can surely figure this out. Okay, so the real trick here is that you can't sneak around to hide from the Garradors because the cultists will just run at you and make noise. So you gotta kill all the little cultists first, and then you can spend like 15 to 20 minutes hiding and taking pot shots at the 2 Garradors until they're dead. That's what I did. After another encounter with Salazar, you are sent down to the deep underground facility area and mines as you try to climb your way back up towards the top. You find out that the Los Plagueis were actually deep buried underground, just kind of hibernating and waiting for them to be revealed and emerge again. Salazar sends his right-hand man downstairs too to deal with you.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
The right-hand man is actually really awful. He is a good callback to like Nemesis and the other pursuers in a way, as you basically have to wait for an elevator to power up as you dodge and evade this big guy. You can freeze him with these liquid nitrogen containers and do damage, but honestly, in my case, I usually just kind of run around to avoid him, and it's a little bit easier and saves you on ammo. This part also glitched out on me, and it's pretty not cool. Alright, so you see right here, there's Mr. Right-Hand Man right in front of me just standing there, and then as we're slowly gonna pan over, you see I'm turning around to get to the elevator room, and then boop! What the heck was that? He just teleports. Like, what the heck? That's just such bullshit. 2 El Gigantes? Haha, stupid. Damn. I didn't know we could do that. Once you reach the mines, there is this really cool Donkey Kong minecart level, and this is just sick. It's just fun action. You get to jump between the different carts and shoot Ganados, and it's a really fun time. This part was fun. The last highlights of the castle here is a sequence where you have to be chased by giant Salazar statues. It's really goofy. But then you finally get to where Ashley's being held as you climb the long tower to face Salazar. Only for him to reveal that Ashley is being taken to an island.
She left with my men to an island.
What? Monsters. Guess after this, there'll be one less to worry about.
Hey, y'all remember that RPG from earlier? I do this every time. I couldn't tell you a dang thing about the intended way to fight this guy. Leon arrives at the island thanks to the help of Ada, as we enter the last part of the game.
Got some business to take care of. See you later.
Women.
The enemies here are a bit more sophisticated in that they have stun batons, and there's a new enemy that has a minigun. Pretty formidable, but nothing we can't handle at this point, with how far we've come. The hard parts should be over, and from here it should just be smooth sailing. Without a doubt in my mind, the scariest enemy in the game are the regenerators. These enemies, as the name implies, can constantly regenerate. The only way to defeat them is to destroy the Plagas in them that you can only see with the thermal scope that you find that you attach to the rifle. I told y'all earlier that the rifle was mandatory, and this is why. You can also use grenades, like incendiary grenades, but just ignore that. The way these things shamble towards you, their constant taunting laughter, they legit haunt me to this day. I was terrified of these things as a kid. They still terrify me now. There's also an Iron Maiden variety that have these big spikes that just hurt you if you get close. When a regenerator spawns, they also have their own theme that is just haunting and pounding as they are slowly shambling towards you. It's very tense. This is excellent enemy design by longtime series producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi. Shinji Mikami referred to the regenerators as a way that Resident Evil 4 retains its survival horror roots, and boy golly, he is 100% right. With Ashley in tow, we soon get to meet a new character, Krauser. And I'll be honest, I think Krauser kind of makes this game a little bit messy. Basically, he's someone from Leon's past thought dead that was actually responsible for kidnapping Ashley in the first place, but he's also working with Wesker to try to get on Sadler's good side so we can get a sample of the Las Plagas virus, and he's also working with Ada, but he doesn't trust her, and it's just really messy. Not as messy as the series has been in the past, but just messy. And his fight sucks too, but we'll get there. Shinji Mikami made a story that was kind of separate from the whole Umbrella thing, yet there still is this kind of subtle aspect in the background of Wesker and Ada and Krauser kind of also trying to get a sample while Leon's trying to rescue Ashley, and like, It works, but I feel like you didn't really need the character of Krauser for that. He's just kind of an enemy to fight. You meet up with Sadler on the island, and he has this ability where he can basically control you if you're infected with the Plagas, so he makes it so Ashley follows him, and she is gone yet again. Okay, I'm starting to understand why you guys think she's annoying. One of the more infamous parts of Resident Evil 4 is this laser room. You gotta remember, this is around the time that the Resident Evil live-action movie came out that had a very infamous scene that was a laser hallway, and they basically just ripped that off and put it in this game. It's so cheesy, it's so hilarious, and it even ends with one of my favorite moments in the game. If this isn't in the remake, I'm demanding a refund. After Ashley's gone, you get to fight this giant big monster, and oh god, I hate this part. I literally forgot this part existed in the game. You basically have a giant cage maze that you have to activate switches and then get to the next cage where the prior one falls, and it's basically this giant, like, centaur from Fallout 3, and this guy just sucks. This is like the first boss that I'm like actively using the Magnum on because I hate this part. It's stupid and it's tense, and I hope this isn't in the remake. So the Krauser part is kind of essentially rushing to get Crest to unlock a door where Sadler and Ashley are going to be. So this small area has a spot where Krauser basically pops up at you and takes shots at you. He'll also kind of teleport in and try to do damage to you. It's kind of interesting because you're kind of being pursued in a way, and it is a little tense. So there are aspects of it that are kind of neat. Once you get both Crests, you get to actually fight Krauser. As a first-time player, this fight absolutely sucked. There's a lot of quick-time events during the fight, it's timed because the tower is rigged to explode, and his mutated arm acts as a shield, so it's really tough to get shots in before he gets too close. As a seasoned veteran, however, Krauser's whole thing is knives, and he actually can go down in like 6 knife hits, so if you just time your knives like when he's about to do this leg sweep, you can just kill him very easily and save all your ammo. I told you, the knife in this game is the GOAT. After defeating Krauser, you are one step closer to getting back Ashley, but a large section with Ganados is up ahead. Thankfully, your evac helicopter finally shows up, and it's piloted by none other than new character Mike.
Hey, it's about time.
Sorry, bad traffic. I'll cover you.
And we like Mike. He's a great guy, and he clears up the areas for you.
Thanks. When we get out of here, drinks are on me.
Yeah, hey, I know a good bar.
Mike! I'll make sure you're the next to go, Sadler.
I've only known Mike for 5 minutes, but since something happened to him, I'm gonna kill everyone on this island and then the Plagueis inside me. At this point, the game is about to be over. You rescue Ashley again, thanks to some help with Ada, and you find a machine that will use radiation to zap the Las Plagueis out of Leon and Ashley, all thanks to Luis's research notes you found along the way. You get to the final merchant of the game, and then you go get ready to fight Lord Sadler. Thankfully, Leon knows to leave Ashley behind as you go to fight him, and honestly, if I had to fight a giant boss fight while taking care of Ashley, I think that would have been really interesting, but I can understand why they didn't do that. So the final boss fight of the game, Lord Sadler. This fight, unfortunately, is also really easy if you're a seasoned veteran like myself. So he's basically this big gross spider, and he has these eyeball joints that he walks around in. You want to keep your distance, and if you just shoot the eyeballs till he collapses, his main eyeball will open up, and you can either shoot that with the Magnum or just run up and stab it. There's also some explosive barrels on this section that does extra damage to stun him. It's really not that bad. I think the cage match fight boss was way harder than this one for sure. After some rinse and repeats, Ada will throw you a special RPG, and then you get to take care of Lord Sadler once and for all. Usually that would be the end of it, but alas, Ada, at gunpoint, takes the Las Plagueis sample away from you, and she's also rigged the island facility to explode.
Don't worry. I'll take good care of it.
Ada!
Gotta go. If I were you, I'd get off this island too.
She really pushed it.
Here, catch. Better get a move on. See you around.
Your only hope for escape is to use Ada's jet ski, so you and Ashley get on and do a very quick, last-minute section to finally escape as the island explodes behind you.
Come on. Let's go home.
Sounds like a great idea. Mission accomplished. Right, Leon?
Not quite. I still have to get you home safe.
So, after you take me back to my place, how about we do some, overtime?
Sorry.
Somehow I knew you'd say that, but it doesn't hurt to ask, you know? So, who was that woman anyway?
Why do you ask?
Come on, tell me.
She's like a part of me I can't let go. Let's leave it at that. Hunnigan, is that you?
Finally, the line's jack-free.
Hey, Hunnigan, no glasses.
Forget the glasses. What's the status of the mission?
I've rescued the subject. We're returning home.
You did it, Leon.
Thanks. You know, you're kind of cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty.
Story of my life.
Wait, how could Leon see Hunnigan this whole time? Isn't that just a walkie-talkie? Does it have a screen? He puts it up to his ear? What? During the 2000s, Nintendo struggled to sell consumers on the Nintendo GameCube, especially when it was competing with the massive PlayStation 2. Capcom decided to help promote third-party support for Nintendo by pushing a handful of games that were to be exclusive to the GameCube, infamously called the Capcom 5. And I say infamously because 3 of the games ended up not being exclusive, and 1 of the games didn't even come out at all. Shinji Mikami had been the one to push for GameCube ports of other Resident Evil games so that fans would be able to play the series' history all on one console, which stemmed from a complaint regarding Code Veronica's initial Sega Dreamcast release that alienated PlayStation owners at launch. Yet despite Mikami's wishes, Capcom at large announced a mere 2 months before release that Resident Evil 4 would also be ported to the PlayStation 2 later that year. Some theorize that this conflict is what led Mikami to wanting to leave the Resident Evil series and pursue his own games outside of the franchise. For more information like this, I definitely recommend Alex Aniel's Itchy Tasty, an unofficial history of Resident Evil that really dives into kind of the series' roots and early development history. I have the GameStop Special Edition, which comes in a cool steelbook and has an animation cell and a prologue guide inside. The PS2 version is the first one that I played myself back in the day. This version introduced some additional content, most notably the side campaign's Separate Ways, in which you play as Ada and see more of her and Wesker's involvement during the events of the main game. It has things like Ada, who is the one who rang the church bell for Leon, and well, there's the petty thief who stole Leon's jacket, I knew it! There's also Assignment Ada, another Ada-led mode where you have to collect Las Plagas samples on the island, and of course, the famous Mercenaries mode returns here. I've hinted at my general disinterest of the Mercenaries modes in series past, but this one is honestly not that bad. There's 4 different maps, and it's a lot of fun. My PS2 copy from way back in the day is a greatest hits disc on a black label case, so shout out to the GameStop at my local mall for that one. Resident Evil 4 was also famously ported to the Nintendo Wii in 2007, complete with motion controls for aiming and shooting, while still supporting GameCube and classic controller support. This version looks a lot darker, and even with component cables, it feels it lacks texture detail, so it's harder to recommend this one over the newer HD version. The motion feels fine, and it does leave a good range of control in a pinch, so it's not the worst way to play. I don't think there really is a bad way to play this game, it's really just based on your comfort level. The PC version I'm playing here is based on the HD release they made for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, which of course have been ported again to newer Xbox and PlayStation systems, as well as the Nintendo Switch, and mobile devices, and there's a VR version, and even the freaking Zeebo. I don't even know what a Zeebo is, but Resident Evil 4 is on it. Ironic that a game that was intended to be an exclusive is on nearly every system imaginable. You think re-releasing Skyrim is funny? Resident Evil 4 is the OG of constant ports and re-releases. At release, Resident Evil 4 was hit with immense praise from nearly everyone within the industry, praising everything up and down from the new innovative gameplay, the quality of voice acting and characters, the impressive visuals, and great use of the 3D space. It was awarded numerous Game of the Year awards, including those given by Game Informer, who in 2009 said it was the best GameCube game of all time, and Nintendo Power, who famously listed it as number 2 on their best games of all time list, just behind Zelda Ocarina of Time, in their 200th issue, released just 1 year after Resident Evil 4's release. Quote, "Without question, there have been few games as consistently captivating, creepy, and fun to play from beginning to end as Resident Evil 4. When people see it, they weep with a mixture of joy and melancholy that more games aren't as hauntingly beautiful. Resident Evil 4 will serve as a benchmark for quality game design for many years to come." Resident Evil 4 is absolutely a masterpiece. Not only is it extremely influential and innovative for its third-person perspective, gameplay, and pushing the next stage for survival horror games, it is also a lot of fun with excellent variety, gameplay balance, and a long enough game that still leaves you wanting more. This game means a lot to me personally, and it was so rewarding to replay this game in preparation for the remake coming out quite very soon. There's a reason this game is considered by many to be a benchmark in gaming, and far and above not only one of the best Resident Evil games, but one of the best games of all time.
And that is Resident Evil 4. No matter how you play it, this game is still an instant classic and definitely holds up for the test of time. I would probably recommend the PC version right now, and even however good or bad the Resident Evil 4 remake is going to be, you still have this classic great title to come back to. And if you've made it this far, I do appreciate you for watching and sticking around. Be sure to subscribe, like, share the video with your friends, and also check out my channel for my reviews of all the other mainline Resident Evil games, as we will continue that journey later on. But until next time, thank you for watching, and take care.
I got him. Egg.